Motorola's brought us 3 new phones at its yearly launch event. This is Phil for Android Central, and this is the Moto X Style, or the Moto X Pure Edition. We'll explain in a minute. So Motorola actually unleashed 3 new phones today. You've got the new Moto G and 2 new versions of the Moto X. The Moto X Play is a mere 5.5 inches with a huge battery, but it's also not coming to North America anytime soon, so we're not going to worry about it just yet. Instead, we've got the new 5.7-inch Moto X Style, as it's going to be known internationally. But here in the US, you're going to see it as the Moto X Pure Edition. In any event, you can consider this the 2015 Moto X, and like its predecessors, it'll be available through the usual carrier system, but also sold directly unlocked from Amazon, Motorola, and Best Buy. The phone itself is a step up from 2014 in a number of ways. It's decidedly bigger than last year's Moto X. The body's a lot bigger. The display is bigger, and in fact, it's almost as big as the ungainly Nexus 6, but it doesn't quite get there, and it's definitely a little easier to hold. That 5.7-inch display is switched from AMOLED to TFT LCD. It's also got a Quad HD resolution, and it looks pretty darn good. The body of the phone is definitely still Motorola. The design language is what we've come to be used to, down to the dimple on the back. Buttons are all in their usual place, and there's a nice metal banding between the front of the phone and the back. And just like before, you'll be able to get the back of the Moto X in a number of styles: leather, textured rubber, and yes, wood, including a really nice looking new walnut. These custom backs will cost just a little bit extra, and they're a really cool option to have. Now, under the hood, we're looking at a Snapdragon 808 processor, Adreno 418 graphics processor, plus a separate natural language processor and contextual computing processor. Now, those last two are what give Motorola's custom software its power, letting you trigger actions without even touching your phone. Now, if you're new to the Moto X, that means you can trigger actions by talking to your phone, or by waving your hand over it, or, and this is one of my favorites, you can open the camera app just by twisting your wrist a couple times. It's powerful stuff, and it's only getting better. Elsewhere on the tech side, the Moto X Style has 3 GB of RAM. You can get it with either 16, 32, or 64 GB of storage. Plus, there's an SD card slot tucked away in the SIM tray, so you've got a lot of options here as well. Rounding things out on the tech side are NFC and an LTE radio that will work on just about any carrier here in the US. Plus, you have a decent pair of front-facing speakers. Now, software-wise, we're looking at Android 5.1.1, and as you'd expect from Motorola, Google's user interface is nearly left untouched. The camera and gallery apps are custom, and there are the other Motorola Assist apps, but that's basically it insofar as the Pure Edition goes. Now, chances are you might end up seeing a few carrier apps on it once the carriers do what the carriers do. Now, the cameras of the Moto X line have always been a little underwhelming, and we're promised again this year that we're not going to be let down this time, that we're going to need some more proper time with the phone before making any sort of call on that. Regardless, we've got a 21 megapixel resolution this time around with an f2.0 aperture. And it does 4K video at 30 frames per second and 1080p at 60 frames per second. Front-facing camera gets some love as well, bumped up to 5 megapixels with a front-facing flash for those times when you just have to take selfies in the dark. And as exciting as all that new hardware and software is, the way Motorola is selling the Moto X is also pretty exciting. Motorola is selling this phone on its own again, plus it's teaming up with Best Buy and Amazon to sell it through them as well. And that's a big deal, and it's something we're seeing more and more manufacturers do, and we like that. Then there's the price. The Moto X Style / Pure Edition, and seriously Motorola, one name would have done just fine, starts at just $399. It'll go up a bit depending on how much storage you want and whether you go for a wood or leather back, but still, that's a top-end phone for around $500 when all is said and done, and that's not a bad price at all. We've still got some questions to be answered about this thing, but for the rest of 2015, Motorola is starting to look pretty good.